Hi, I'm Alexandra Harrison of Supporting Child Caregivers, and I'd like to welcome you to this video on using good discipline with sibling conflict. It's true that many of the problems that parents bring to me in my child psychotherapy practice have to do with sibling conflict, because usually parents are concerned about behavior problems in one of their children, and often these problems include picking on or even bullying a younger sibling. Sibling conflict is a very common source of distress and unhappiness in families, and parents often have a hard time dealing with it. There are a number of features why using good discipline with sibling conflict can be distinguished from limit-setting scenarios that I've described in other videos. The first is that parents are confronted with 2 or more children instead of only 1. And the second is that the polarizing dynamic that I've described as occurring between parents can now occur between siblings. And the third is that the issue of accountability is more complicated and confusing. The first feature, that of parents being confronted with 2 siblings or more instead of 1, forms the foundation for the other 2, because it sets up the potential for polarizing and it makes accountability more confusing. Now, before we get into the special features of good discipline with sibling conflict, let's review my basic guidelines for good discipline. Number 1, validate the child's feelings and help the child get self-regulated. Number 2, try to understand the meaning the child makes of the situation. And number 3, create a response that is both containing and also a learning opportunity. In short version, number 1, validate and regulate. Number 2, understand. And number 3, respond. Now, you can see right away that the involvement of 2 or more children can complicate these guidelines. Guideline number 1, validate and regulate. Oh my gosh, in sibling rivalry, both children must have their feelings validated, and both children must be helped to calm down. That often means that the parents might separate them in order to pay close enough attention and listen carefully to each child, and sometimes they even have to be in separate rooms in order to pay adequate attention. If there's a significant disparity in age or size between the siblings, it's very important for the parents to think of safety first. They need to make sure that the younger child is protected. Of course, parents should be aware of the fact that sometimes the younger child is the provocateur and not the victim. The second guideline is that of understanding the meaning the child makes of the situation, and that is complicated both by issues of accountability, but also by this idea of polarizing, because families often assign polarized roles to individual family members. And sometimes, for example, in the case of the peacemaker, sometimes one sibling is considered a peacemaker, the other a troublemaker. You can see how these are polarized. And these different roles always derive, at least in part, from the child's behavior, but they can take on a life of their own. So that, for example, sometimes the peacemaker can take on too great a burden for resolving conflict in the family, a burden that really belongs to the parents. And sometimes the troublemaker really gives up hope in succeeding in winning the parents' approval and behaves as badly as his parents expect him to. You can see how that might lead the troublemaker to avoid taking responsibility for his behavior because he perceives the world as being against him. And so, no matter what he might do, he fails. Now, in fact, this problem with accountability leads us to the third guideline, and that is finding a good response for the children's behavior that provides the children with a learning opportunity. When a parent's confronted with two children fighting, the issue of accountability is really in the forefront, and typically each child blames the other for starting the fight. Some parents take the tack that children should just deal with it themselves because maybe both children are to blame. There's a problem with this, though, and that is that unless it's a very mild dispute, the children are showing the parents with their distress that they can't manage on their own, that they need the parents to help them sort things out. Now, if you've listened to my other videos on good discipline, you may anticipate my next suggestion, and that is, remember the book Getting to Yes. It gives excellent ideas about how to deal with sibling conflict. Without getting into too much detail, remember that we need to focus on the author's ideas about how to set up a successful negotiation. Each negotiating partner gets to pick a fixed position and a flexible position. Now, before even the children do this, the parents get to do it first. So, for example, let's think about a situation in which young children are fighting about which seat in the car to sit in on the way to school. And first, the parent gets to set the parent's fixed position, and that might be the firm position that a choice has to be made within 2 minutes or everyone will be late for school. And the parent's flexible position may be she doesn't care which child sits where, but they need to leave on time. Okay, then the children get to pick their firm and flexible positions. The parent will probably need to help the children do this because the firm positions might be quite unreasonable. So, for example, the oldest might set an unreasonable firm position, such as I'm the oldest, so I get to choose first. And the youngest might choose something like she always gets to choose first, and so this time I get to be first. Typically, this child doesn't offer any evidence for her stating her position. In this example, the older child, with the parent's help, may state the firm position that she needs to stay in her favorite seat. She needs to sit in her favorite seat on the way to school because it's hard for her to get to school. This is the hardest time of day for her. And her flexible position might be that her sister can pick what music they listen to on the way to school. And then the parent might help the younger child pick a firm position, such as she gets to pick the next time there's a choice to be made. For example, she gets to pick the video that they watch in their screen time after school. And then the parent will help her with the flexible position, which is that the video has to be chosen from a group of videos that they all enjoy. Well, you can see that the parent has to play a very active role as the mediator in this negotiation. But what a wonderful opportunity to learn this is. Learning how to reflect on one's needs and wishes, learning the difference between what you wish and what you need, and then considering what the other person wishes and needs, and coming to a compromise. What a valuable learning opportunity. What a valuable process to learn. And you, the parent, will be learning so much too, if you can allow yourself the time and attention that this good discipline activity requires. You will be helping your children's brains grow, and your brain might even grow a little too. So I want to thank you for watching this video. Please join us next week in our video about good discipline in the school setting. If you want to hear more about managing sibling conflict and the special complications that can arise, please listen to Supporting Child Caregivers podcast, episode number 13, on good discipline with sibling conflict.